Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. I am so honored and grateful that you are tuning in, but I have to ask for your help. I'm going to pull an NPR. If you'd like to help the show, you can donate to the show at emmettmuckles.com/donate, or just visit emmettmuckles.com. Follow the link in the menu to the donate page where you can make a donation of your choice. Thank you.
Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with Emmett Muckles, Emmett and friends, as you guys know. Today is the day that you were given another thing. You know what that thing was? It was a chance. It was a chance to live in this moment. Tomorrow is not here. Yesterday is gone. All you have is now. With those billions of cells that are traveling in your hemisphere, what are you going to do with them? Because when your cells eat, yourself gets hungry. Anyway, I wasn't going to go too deep today, and I didn't, and I accomplished that task. But today, we're going to go tech. And the tech we're going to go to is the inner tech. So help me to welcome, as I am going to do, my man, Rusty. Rusty, what's going on, man?
Hey, Emmett, good to see you. Good to be with you today.
Now, I didn't say your last name because I didn't want to mess it up. Say it for me.
Yes, it's Gaillard.
Oh, yeah, I would have totally jacked that up. I would have been like, Gail. But you know what? I'm respectful like that because first of all, when you hear a name like Emmett Muckles, a certain picture in most people's minds come to play, and it's not me. So people, and they mutilate my name.
I'm with you. I've gotten all sorts of things, so I would not have been offended if you had tried and missed.
So you used to work in the tech industry, and the tech industry is a high pressure. It's a very rewarding place, but it can take you away from your humanness, and you let that all go to work on inner tech for yourself and others. The first question I always ask is, what got you to now?
It's a great question, and there was a couple of different things that intersected. As you mentioned, I was working in the tech industry. I worked at Apple. I spent 13 years there, and I was very successful from all external standpoint. But at some point, I came to the fact that I wasn't really happy doing what I was doing, but I had no idea what else to do. And I was working in finance at that point. And so I looked at my resume and it's like, okay, finance. Where can I get a finance job? I can go to another tech company. Yeah. I could go to consulting or a startup, but it felt like all repeat of what I was doing there. And I didn't want to repeat something. I wanted to do something new. So during this place where I was kind of unsettled but not knowing what to do, on the personal side, I went through a divorce.
Ooh.
And that really rocked my world. It was really the biggest failure that I had in my life at that point. That's how I saw it. And I had to come through that personally. I had to confront it. There was no changing it. It was what it was. And coming through that, the other thing that I realized was I had no real close people in my life that I could talk to about it. I didn't grow up in the kind of family where we talked about our feelings and our struggles and all that kind of thing. And so I didn't have my family to talk about. I didn't have friends because I didn't grow up that way, talking about what was really going on in my life. So I entered that divorce process totally alone. And I had a therapist, but it's not the same thing.
No.
So I built that. I built that network of people in my life that I actually can talk to and share my life with. And these two paths came together, this personal path and this professional dissatisfaction, when somebody asked me one day at a talk, and I can remember specifically the day and where it was, and I can picture myself sitting there because it was so meaningful. And they said, well, what if you actually could do what you wanted to in your life? What if what you got, how much money you have was not a constraint, and your experience wasn't a constraint, and what other people thought wasn't going to hold you back? If none of that stuff held you back, what would you want to do? And the first idea that came to me was, I want to have meaningful conversations with people, because that's been so transformative for me in going through this divorce process and talking to people.
I got a question for why didn't you just start a podcast? I have these meaningful conversations weekly.
It's a great idea, but I'll tell you, and this I think is a reflection of inner technology, back to this idea, which is that we only come up with the kind of ideas that we allow ourselves to think of. And podcasting wasn't on my radar. So it never even occurred to me to start a podcast. It's not like I thought about it and ruled it out. It wasn't even one of the possibilities.
Right.
So just like coaching hadn't been up until that point in my life. And so, for me, the path that I went down was to become a coach and have these conversations one-on-one with people. It could easily have been a podcast, but what we think is possible and impossible for us is a direct reflection of our inner technology.
Yeah. So if I could ask you a personal question, when did you go through the divorce?
The divorce was final about 3 years ago.
Yeah. I went through a divorce, and I see it like a death and a rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
Because, a lot of times, you're talking about, I didn't have these people that I could, communicate with. A lot of times with those relationships are the people, and it polarizes. And sometimes you lose the closest people to you in that scenario. That's what kind of crossed my mind when you said that, because I went through it myself. I didn't lose anybody. I was just like, oh, I'm out. Deuces. And moved to Indiana.
Yeah, the death and rebirth is a great way to say that, because it really did feel like the death, and the rebirth has been magnificent.
Yeah.
So I'm in a better place in my life now than I was then. But man, I was holding on to that with everything I got, and I wouldn't have let go voluntarily. So that I didn't have a choice in it. But in the end, I'm grateful. But it was painful.
So if I come to you, let's say I'm going through something in my life, or I'm a colleague and you see me just like dealing with the same thing. So how do you find that purpose / passion in your life? How do you locate that thing? I know how I do it, but I'm interested to find your methodology.
Yeah. Well, I believe, first of all, that we all have it inside of us. So and I think the way you expressed it was great, is how do you locate it? Because it's there fundamentally. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's taking the things out of the way that are blocking you from it. And for most of us, I talk about it as, when I talk about inner technology, one way to think about that is your operating system, which is your beliefs about the way the world works. And everybody has one. We all have one. It's what we think is possible and what we think we can accomplish in life. It comes from our family, from our upbringing, from society, from media, it comes from all those places. But it can limit us. And it's starting to peel away those layers or limitations about what we think is possible. I'll just give you just a very simple example. Is one of my clients is working very successful, has a very successful job in the biotech industry. And really it loves outdoors, loves being outside, and is just passionate about being outside, and would love to go work in an outdoor oriented company. And his assumption was, well, yeah, but they're not located in any place I'd want to live, and I wouldn't make as much money. I'd have to take a big pay cut. So I'd sacrifice my quality of life, and then my career trajectory wouldn't be as good, and blah, 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 blah. So all of those assumptions limit him. They prevented him from actually doing anything. And so he never took any steps forward. But as through our work together, I mean, this is a very simple example, but you can strip some of that away and say, well, what if that weren't a constraint? What if you could live where you wanted to live and be paid the same amount as you're being paid now, and do work that you're really fired up and passionate about? And if you hold open that possibility, you can actually move forward and find it. So all that is just a simple example to say the biggest obstacle is inside for most of us. And then the third thing I would say is that most people can get hung up on finding one right answer. When you're just trying to find the single thing that's going to be the one end all be all for you, I just think that that's a recipe for disappointment and frustration, because I've been there, and I just wouldn't recommend that to anyone.
This is a thing that I've adopted, and it goes back, I can't remember when I didn't do it. So I've always used my JOB as my angel investor.
Hmm.
So most people literally live to work, or they don't know that they live to work, but they're living to work.
Mm-hmm.
And I adopted, hey, first of all, I have to get my financial literacy right and understand that. And then once I did that, that freed up a lot of things. Then I could explore and see what I did like or what I do like and go investigate it, because now, A, I have this ability and capital to do it, and I can make the time to do it. And I find that so many people, like you said, are looking for the Neo, the one thing. But you know, one of the things is mindset. How can people adopt or alter their mindset to be more positive? Because if you're in a neutral or below neutral state, you can't move forward. You know, if you're like Eeyore, like, oh, you know, I really would like to build kayaks, but I got this job. Oh,
Yeah. Well, sadly, a lot of people live like that, you know? A lot of people point to their environment, their job, whatever it is. They point to things outside of them and say, well, that's why I can't really have what I like. And you make a great point, which is mindset is the difference between being limited and being able to move forward. Having simple way to create a more positive mindset is to start with gratitude, is to be grateful for what you have. And, you know, that can sound really trite, right? People say, yeah, gratitude. I hear about that all the time. I don't care about that. But there's research studies that demonstrate this, that people who practice gratitude, and it's a practice, who really focus on building that sense of gratitude for their life, they're happier, they accomplish more of what they want to accomplish. Like, it's scientifically proven. So it sounds really simple, but it works.
You know, I concur with you. Every night I give thanks. I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful for. Thank you so much. You know, because a lot of times, you know, we call this thing prayer. And a lot of people are just begging instead of looking at like, I woke up today. I was able to literally stand up out of bed. I was able to brush my teeth with water that's clean. I was able to like put clothes on. I was able to drive a car to this place. Yeah. I was able to, you know, people just take it for granted. All the luxuries, all the amenities that we have, and I mean physical and spiritual and emotional, and just don't take them into consideration, you know. But let's delve deep into this, because you and I have an understanding about how the systems work. We may not have the most comprehensive, but we have a good chunk of it. But there's something that's holding most people back. What do you think that is?
If I said it very simply, I really believe it's the operating system. It's the beliefs and assumptions about what you can and cannot do. And if you upgrade that, and gratitude is one very simple way to upgrade your operating system, you can, in fact, make a shift. So I'll just walk through another really simple example, which is, you know, for your listeners to bring something to mind that's important to you. And just you know, bring one or two things. It's something that's important to you. And then just ask yourself, does the amount of energy and attention that thing gets, is that equal to its importance in your life? In other words, if something's really important, are you giving time and energy to it? Or you say it's important, but it's not getting the time and energy that you would like to be putting into it. And then ask yourself just simply, what's blocking you from making the investment of time and energy that you would like to make in that thing? And back to your earlier point, Emmett, a lot of people are going to say, well, it's, you know, I don't have time because my work is really demanding, or my boss is asking me to do this, or I can't do that because I don't have the money to do it. Or, you know, there's always going to be reasons. And I also know that there's always something you can do to move in that direction. Now, that step might feel uncomfortable. because it's pushing you a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Like our comfort zone is what we're used to. It's what's our routine. It's our habits. And if you're going to create expansion in your life, you're going to have to stretch your comfort zone. Yeah. So taking an action that moves you forward towards what it is that's important to you so that it's more fully expressed in your life is going to feel uncomfortable, but you can do it. And so if you're willing to tolerate the discomfort long enough to take the action to invest in that thing that you care about, that's a very simple way of upgrading your operating system. Because now all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, all those things I thought were holding me back, they didn't actually hold me back. I was able to make progress in spite of all of those. And once you gain that learning, you can just keep expanding that and expanding it.
So what about this I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, this virus? And I've spoken of this in the past. There are viruses that we are exposed to daily. Here's the funny part about it, is we actually go to the virus, which is television, radio, social media. All these things can be viral. I mean, as you've heard, things go viral. So, a lot of people don't listen to the wordplay and what that is, but a lot of negative and judgmental and cancel culture and all this is going on that helps or aids in the detriment of your moving forward. Do you have any suggestions for people who are so caught up in right now and you see that it is having a negative effect on their life?
I mean, I think it's a great point, Emmett. And, you can't expect to get positive, uplifting news when you're tuned into channels that don't provide that. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to feel positive and uplifted when you're watching negative junk all the time. So it's really a choice. There's no right and wrong in this. But if you're dissatisfied with your own experience and you're wanting to change something in your own experience, be thoughtful and deliberate about what you're immersing yourself in. So I think it's that simple. And that goes to media, that goes to social media, of course. Ooh. It goes to news, but it's your friends and your family. It's like, what are they all talking about? And are you surrounded with people who are talking about possibility and potential and things you can do, or are they negative?
Tony Robbins has this practice, and a couple of other people have this practice of walking on hot coals or walking through the fire. And a lot of people feel like they have to go to this extreme measure, or they have to really just be broken down before they move forward. Is that necessary?
No, it's not. So I believe two things. One is you can be pushed by pain, and that's the breakdown. Right? That's the extreme measure kind of thing. It's like gets so bad, I'm willing to do anything. But the alternative of being pushed by pain is to be pulled forward by a vision, pulled forward by something that's attractive enough, that's compelling enough for you in your life that you're willing to stretch for it. So, just back to the simple example about, the social media or the news or the kind of things that you're watching and surrounded by. If you want to feel happier, more positive and uplifted, are you willing to put that away for a week and try and experiment with yourself? I love that notion of an experiment, by the way, is, it makes things feel a little less intimidating. It's like, I'm going to give up social media for the rest of my life. Like that's a hard commitment to make. But to say, I'm going to try and experiment and give it up for a week and see at the end of that week how it went, that's a totally easier thing to do.
Yeah, we are in Lent right now, too. This is the perfect time this is the perfect excuse to find yourself anew or to try something out. All right. So when you were working in tech, everything is gravy. Tech is it's like the captain of the football and basketball team. If you say to somebody, I work in tech, they're like, ooh. But what most people don't realize, it's a job. And jobs are typically not created by us. Someone says, here's a position, fill it. And it doesn't spark passion. Now I'm going to go back to the basics. If someone says to you, I hate my job. I literally hate my job. It makes me ill, but I can't leave. What's the first step you'd say to do?
Well, the first thing I would ask is, what's it costing you to stay in a job that you hate? One thing you said is it literally makes me ill. And some people literally get ill from their jobs. People can have heart attacks, all sorts of horrible effects. So it's important to look squarely at the cost of staying in a situation that doesn't serve you. It's uncomfortable to do that. Let me just be clear. Nobody really wants to stop and look at that and just ask, how bad is it? What's it costing me now? And if I stayed here for the next 2 years, the next 3 years, 5 years, what is the cost to me personally? Cost is not, and that's not just financial. That can be health, it can be relationship, happiness, satisfaction, any of those things. But there is a cost. So step number one is to look at that.
Oh, awesome.
Step number two, I would say, is to say, what you say is blocking you. Like, what if it didn't?
Ooh.
Just get curious with what if. What if that didn't block you? What would you do?
A lot of people can't do that. That's true. I'm not being negative about it. I'm just going off the experience, because here's one of the things that I ask people, and it throws them for a loop. And I'll listen to them, and then I'll come back with this. What do you want?
Yeah.
They're like, and here's the answer that comes up. I don't know. My next question is, why? What have you gone out and experienced things that mildly interest you? They're like, and I'm not talking about things that you already know. I'm talking about things that you went, that's cool. Have you thought about that? And they say, no. And I say, why? And they're like, I don't know. I was like, well, find out what you like, start experiencing it. The rest of it will fall into place.
Yeah. So I think you're pointing to something super important, which is, it's not that people can't answer the question. It's that they haven't really asked themselves the question before. So they don't have an answer for it. So and what you're saying is right on, because most people, we live a life, but how thoughtful are we about the life we're living? Most people will spend more time planning a long weekend or planning a vacation or a barbecue or a birthday party than they spend thinking about questions like you just asked. What do you really want in life? What's important to you? What kind of experiences do you want to have? What kind of work would you love to be doing? And all of those things are within reach. All of them. And they may feel out of reach right now, but you got to start with the question and just get curious about it.
That's one of the things my wife and I did when we came together as a couple. We kind of slowly moved toward this thing, and then we found ourselves there. And it formed in a sentence: live for experiences, not things. And
that's awesome.
Once we started doing that, because people were like, how are you guys doing all this stuff? You're in Europe, you're in this, you guys are making stuff. I'm like, because we're living for the experience, not the thing. I'm like, we have the things, because once you get to a certain, things are going to come. You have to have certain things to function in this life. It's just, you can't focus in on those things. So let's jump in. Inner technology. You and I are in an elevator or we're going in a building. I see this cool guy with this awesome ginger beard. And I'm like, that's dope. I'm like, my man, what do you do? And, you're like, hey, I'm Rusty and I do this. And you tell me about this inner technology. And I'm like, why? Are you going to put a microchip in me? What's going on? So what is inner technology, and how can people start at the brass taxes upgrade themselves?
Yeah. Well, so inner technology includes things like you talked about, the viruses, like all the viruses that are coming. How are you handling those? Are you aware of them? And what's your response to it? It includes your operating system. which is your beliefs and assumptions about how the world works. And think about your phone for a moment, which is you upgrade the operating system on your phone regularly, right? Updates just show up and you just install them every year. Maybe there's a major update, but when did you really upgrade yourself? When's the last time you deliberately upgraded your own operating system, your own capabilities and way of operating in the world? So that, that's a question most people will say, gosh, I've never even thought about that.
Right.
And then you also have this idea of the cloud, right? Everybody talks about the cloud. Everything's cloud enabled these days. And it's like, well, what does that mean for your life? How do you, you said it so well, when you focus on experiences, not things, the things come. Well, how does that work? Well, that's part of this whole experience, which is there's more going on here than you can control. Like life is bigger than you, and you're a part of something bigger going on. So that you are connected to the cloud in that way, whether you know it or not. And you can embrace that, and that can help contribute to your life. So intertechnology really embraces all of this. But probably the easiest thing for people to grasp is this idea of the operating system and the upgrades. And starting with some of the really simple questions like we talked about, which is, what do you want? What's important to you? There doesn't have to be one answer, but a couple of things that are important to you. And then just ask, do you have those things in your life? The things you want and the things that are important to you. Do you have them in your life? And if not, what do you think is standing in your way? And then what if that wasn't actually standing in your way? What if your assumption that it was in your way is the problem? Not the thing itself, but your belief that it's in the way.
There's this other thing that's just kind of popped into my cranium. Often people are looking externally and seeing limitations. They won't let me do this. They, she, him. What's the combat to that? Because, and this is why I'm saying what's the combat to that, or how do you remedy this, is because sometimes you're in a situation you can't see that you're the major contributor to your own demise.
Yeah. Well, so I just come from the assumption always that I have a part in every situation. And I would encourage all of your listeners to just assume that you have a part in whatever it is that you think is holding you back. Yes, the other person may have a part too, but you also have a part. I'll share with you a little experience I had, this was a few years ago, but we did an experience where we paired up, and one person would hold their arm out, straight out from their body. And then the other person would push down on their arm to push it back down so it would go back down by their side. And this was not a strength contest, but the interesting thing about this is the person pushing down on the arm to try to push it back down would think either a positive thought about the other person or a negative thought about the other person at random. You get to pick, right? And not say it, but just think it. And then they would go and push on the arm. And more often than not, when they were thinking a negative thought about the other person's yielded very quickly and just let their arm fall. And when they were thinking a positive thought about the other person's arm stayed out more rigid. There was more resistance. Now, there was no words exchanged in this. This was just simply, thinking it and pushing on the arm. And it's it sounds very woo-woo. It sounds very out there. It sounds very strange, but it was just a fascinating real life experience of what we think matters. Yeah, and it's like walk into the room and you see your partner, your spouse, or you walk in and you see your boss. Like, pretty quickly if they're in a good mood or a bad mood. Like, we are very perceptive, and to think that you are not influencing the other person based on your judgments about them, come on, like that's just not the case. So how can you work with your judgments, with your own assumptions about the other person, about the situation? How can you shift those things and start to create some movement and some possibility?
All right, we're going to do an exercise. You ready?
I'm always ready.
You got to close your eyes.
All right.
Make sure your doors are locked. Now, I want you to picture you get home, you don't have any responsibilities, nobody's there, you're like, finally, no phone calls, nobody's coming over, I'm going to sit down here. I'm going to have me a glass of something, maybe put on a favorite movie and just chill. And you sit down on your couch, shoes off, doorbell rings, and you look quizzically at the door, and you walk over to the door. You open the door, and to your utter surprise is your 19-year-old you. And the first thing your 19-year-old you says, man, that's a nice beard. Can't wait to get that thing. And then, you look like you're doing well, Rusty. What advice would you give me so I can get there with just a little more ease?
That's a great question. What I would say to that younger version of me is, don't assume the path that you start walking on is the path that will take the way to the end. And you may switch paths at some point. And that might require, a bumpy road, or getting stuck in the mud, or climbing up a hill. But all of those things are okay, because you can change direction, you can follow your heart, and follow your inner guidance towards what it is that you're pulled towards, even if it means changing paths, and that's okay.
Well, that's awesome. How can people find you?
The best places to find me are on my website, and my website is svdreambuilders.com. It stands for Silicon Valley Dreambuilders.com. So svdreambuilders.com. And also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, I'm pretty active there on LinkedIn, so you can also find me there, Rusty Gaillard.
So are you doing any Zoom meetups or anything like that?
I am. I've got them. So most of those will be posted and communicated on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So I do once or twice a month. I've got something going on, either on my own something that I'm hosting, or sometimes I partner up with other people to host something. So I do those, and finding me on LinkedIn would be the best place to get that information.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast.
Oh, Emmett, it's been a lot of fun. It's been fun talking to you, man. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we depart you for now. Well, some time ago, right before your inception, like maybe a day before you really started to do your replication, Mommy and Daddy got together. They probably had some Moscato, and he had some tequila, and they was dancing and hanging out, or they just Netflixed and chilled. But anyway, he shared some information with her. She took it in, and this is what's so cool about women. When you give them things, they make you stuff. So if you buy her a house, she makes you a home. If you buy groceries, she makes you a meal. Historically, I don't want to seem too sexist, but you get what I'm saying. But in that process, he gave her something, and she started to make you. She said, okay, these two are going to be 4, then they're going to be 8, then they're going to be 16. At the 30-day mark of her doing her magic along with the cosmos, you were a billion cells and you hadn't hit the planet. It's all about love. Earth, Wind, and Fire actually said that. It's all about love. So you have to start with love of self. Some of what we've been talking about, you have to go to your inner space to find your inner tech to work with your whole being, chakras, energy centers, your thought process. You have to bring that to your consciousness. One way to do that is when you get out the shower, leave your towel on the floor, just dry off, and then drop that baby. Walk over to the mirror, and I want you to look at it, actually put some music on, like do a little dance so you get all those jiggly parts moving, because those are your jiggly parts. I got them, you got them, we all got them. And then once you see that what you are is right there, get close to the mirror, look in your eye, and it's going to contract and expand. The iris looks like a nebula in the sky, as above, so below. that lets you know that we are fractal beings because we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And the next time you meet someone with a nebulae in their eye, like the one in the sky, treat them with love, honor, and respect. Till next time, love you all. Peace.